So, for context, everyone, I have a Discord server, and inside the Discord server, we talk about, well, it started off talking about tech, but now that I talk about ecological psychology a bit more, and I do have other videos planned to come out about this very useful book, Introduction to Ecological Psychology, have a long video essay, but doing smaller videos about it, we've been having conversations inside the Discord, and one point came up, which I've just shared with Amelia, and they were immediately triggered, like I was emotionally triggered. And so we were like, okay, let's calm down and have a chat. And the comment essentially said, and I think they have it in front of them, but essentially said that the ecological approach is limited. It's limited in the way that it describes
So,
behavior.
so, I think what is meant by this and what I'm getting from this, because I've been browsing we had a conversation about someone last week that I was talking to who have
Correct.
now leaned into another label that is just being slapped on top. Could be explained by the ecological approach, but sadly it's turned into this whole thing.
Wow. It's becoming a thing, is it?
Uh, which I don't I would And I think this kind of links to this in terms of there's not enough labels so that we can box things in. Like that feels like I've had a number of conversations with people this week and they're like, yeah, but what about this very specific thing? Yeah, that's still ecological psychology. Yeah, but it's not, is it? I'm like, it's not about yeah, it is. And it's been quite interesting as I've been talking to non-eco folks about it, and they're like, "Oh no, well that doesn't account for this." I'm like, "Yeah, it does. But
Hmm.
what about this thing? What about this thing? What about that thing? What about this thing? What about that thing?" I'm like, "This is how it's explained. That's how it's explained. It's the same." Yeah, but you're just saying the same thing. I'm like, I know.
That's the point.
That's the point. And I think that's what's happened. I've only just
Hmm.
skimmed, but that sounds like that's what's happening here. It's limited because there isn't a bunch of
Things.
things added
Yeah.
to it. It's just perception and action coupling basically
Yeah. It's
is it.
organisms perceiving within the
It is
organism
it.
environment
Yeah.
relationship. And I believe, my understanding of the conversation currently, I believe you are right. Like, the way the conversation is going is as I expected it to go, really, with anyone that follows AIF or active inference or active inference work or the free energy principle, looking predominantly through Bayesian statistics and the Bayesian brain hypothesis, but then alongside any other traditional cognitive psychology terminology, most of those sorts of individuals, when they're discussing these things, will say, well, yeah, but ecological psychology doesn't explain this or this or this because you need these things. And something that's come up quite frequently is priors. Oh, but you can't do that because you don't have priors, or priors will overwrite this, or your prior experience will do that. And or cognition is different from perception. And this is where I think the as we were discussing a couple of weeks ago about the fundamentals of ecological psychology, those core assumptions that we use that are drastically different, that are radically different, as we would describe, because it's radical in activism if you're looking at the AAF, or it's ecological psychology if you're ecologically driven, those radical assumptions alter how you explain what perception is. And something that I saw through this Discord conversation, which I feel is central in your discussions, is direct perception doesn't explain it well enough because it
Mm,
doesn't use the words, terms, and labels that they are familiar with,
mm.
like
Yeah,
mental models. The discussion was they don't use mental models, but we have a model.
but
So
we
do we,
don't.
but this is where I feel that you can't pick and mix conversation gets confusing.
Yeah.
Let me know if I'm going a bit sideways for you in a second.
Hmm.
In traditional cognitive psychology approaches, the mental models has been used as a state of mind. You have a mental model that you can have, that you can adopt. You can, it's like a program you put into your head right now. I'm going to use this mental model to do this
Yeah.
skill, which most people, forefront of cognitive science, disagree with. That's including those from active inference. They disagree that you can have a mental model, plug it in, and go, right, that's how we work. It's a program, as it were. They don't believe that the computer metaphor is accurate, including the active inference stuff, in active inference people. Well, most of those people. The as this idea of a model has evolved, active inference and radical inactivism with active inference, again, to my understanding, doesn't use a mental model or a collection of mental models. They use their term a generative model or generative models. Again, they're two different things, but fundamentally, I believe they are still the same thing, leading to Helmholtzian likelihoods and probabilities because they're using priors to adjust predictions or prediction errors in order to act. You can say that it's coupled, and you can say that, oh, the organism or the agent is interpreting the environment dynamically as they're moving. You can say that as much as you want, but if you are creating predictions and
We're
using
not. Yeah.
representations, that's indirect perception.
Yeah. I
I
just I am baffled because even at the beginning of my journey, and I may have to go and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know whether I was quite I'm not understanding like straight away, even though I didn't understand all of the details and anywhere near as much as I do now, it still just made sense. Like it was not fully like I couldn't get a full handle on it yet. But also, it made, oh, well, this is much easier. That explains this. Like, it was, maybe I'm just more open to differing ideas, but I never really felt that the the traditional cognitive approaches made much sense. There was always something missing. Now, whether that's because now I'm in a different place and now I maybe that is the case, but like even back at the beginning, I was like, yeah, but I'll use these terms because that's the terms that I'm told are correct because science says. And if science says it has to be correct, it's not like it's a theory or anything.
I think your because your understanding and the language and jargon that you had going into this was very pop science rather than
Yeah.
academic science. It and we discussed the issues and the conflicts through practical examples of application and then describing the language where you got sort of hit stumbling blocks of I don't really know how to explain this thing. I could answer some of those questions with ecological psychology because I
Mm.
feel some people that are more into the active inference space, they have potential answers. And so it there's another step and there's another
Yeah,
step
I
and
guess.
they keep
But
adding on these steps of, oh yeah, but you could explain it like this. Like, yeah, you could. We just choose not to because of all these other things.
and also because it's so much simpler. Like, what is the at the end of the day, what is the end result? What is the goal-directed behavior of exploring this stuff? And I think it's where I find my work quite interesting because at the end of the day, people just want to get stuff done. Cool. Then here's what we do. We act, perceive, perceive, act, do the thing. Go.
What I
Oh,
find what I find really interesting is, well, I'm going to try and avoid saying that because I feel like I'm saying that's really interesting a lot lately, and I've noticed it. So
that's interesting.
what has got me thinking more than something else, um, is the comment that was made through this long thread about the complex jargon of ecological psychology and all of the words, which I think falls back on their lack of expertise. If we're describing through ecological psychology someone's learning development path, and they have experienced multiple times and for a longer period of time the terminology that's used in traditional cognitive psychology, and say they're 20, 30, 40 years old, they've had that many years to explore the meanings of those words, to explore the relationships of those words. And there's probably a lot of those words. When you're introduced to something that's relatively new, ecological psychology, and the meanings of words are different, now you might only have 20 words that are the entirety of the theory, but they are 20 new words that have various meanings depending on the relationship you have with them, because meanings are in people,
That's
not
true.
words.
Yeah.
And so, yes, the words are complex because they encompass so much information. Whereas the words that you're more familiar with, going back to your original point, are categories. This category is over here. This category is over here. This category is over here. Instead of it being you're remembering, it is all the different types of memory, all the different types of processing memory, all the different theories about memory processing, whether it's short term, whether it's long term, whether it's working memory, short term working memory, or working memory and long term. And then you've got phonological loops that go in there. All of these words in ecological psychology would be described through remembering. So the
Why is
meaning,
that? I think and maybe because I've been in it for too long now, when really, relatively speaking, I haven't. But like, why? Why is remembering not enough? Why can't remembering be enough? Like, that is the biggest question I have. When we create all of these phonological loops and this thing and that thing and just categories that don't even make sense for most people's daily experiences. Like that
that's the
it
thing. The
doesn't
words are created
track.
for the academics.
Yeah, but people are using them as if they're like and the,
Hmm.
but don't actually understand what they're saying. The assumptions that they're making based on what they're saying. And the assumptions that they're making based on what they're saying is, in the case in my world with ADHD and autism, it is disruptive, it's destructive, it is damaging because, oh, we can't process. Okay, so how do you do things? Oh, we don't. We don't do things. We can't do things. We're incapable of acting. I'm like, but that's not true. And we know that's not true because you're a living, breathing human being and you do things. You have a business or you have a life or you do things. How do you do those things? Oh, well, I just do them. Exactly.
Every action is goal directed. There is a purpose to every behavior. This relates to, I think this is a practical example potentially that could be useful here. On Friday, there was an individual that had an issue. So they have learning difficulties and they have communication struggles when traditionally defined through society. And they had an issue and they went off into a cupboard. And I don't like the term, but it was described by said parent as a mental breakdown. I don't like that term at all. They had a problem and they were acting out to try and solve the problem. What they were doing, the way I would describe it, is they had a problem and they recognized that people weren't paying attention to their problem that they wanted solved. So they acted in a way to grab attention and they tried to communicate their problem to another person. So I only found this out afterwards because I was supporting someone doing a back somersault at the time. So I can't exactly like drop them and be like, "Oh, what's going on over there?" It's not possible. But I found out this afterwards. The way I would describe their behavior was they were acting antisocially because they wanted to grab people's attention to the problem that they had. They struggled to communicate that problem with traditional terminology, so they shouted and they screamed at the person that was on their trampoline. We have three people on a trampoline as maximum. That person has a sibling that's normally on the trampoline with them, so there's normally two, not three. The added person was the problem. Now, originally, they didn't have a problem. Then they suddenly had a problem. The suddenly came out of nowhere, apparently. It didn't. This person that is again using social labels here, they are difficult. They have troubling behavior. They're antisocial. This person recognized there was two people on all the other trampolines and three on theirs. One person on one of the other trampolines stopped trampolining. So now there's a trampoline with one and a trampoline with three. They now suddenly misbehave. Are they suddenly misbehaving, or have they recognized this person could go over there and they don't understand why this person is over here? How do they communicate that? They behave, act out to try and grab attention. Did it work? No. So they act out again, try and grab more attention. Okay, now they've got the attention and they're trying to communicate there's a problem. This person shouldn't be here. And instead of the individuals at the time exploring the behavior, why are you acting like this? What is the goal directed behavior you have here? What is your intention here? They saw it as a problem. They saw it as them acting out. That to me shows that the understanding, the philosophy, the ideologies, the psychology of ecological psychology, looking at human behavior differently, can explain the behavior. And because it can explain the behavior, you can solve the problem far quicker, which makes working with individuals, whether that's organisms, i.e., dogs, cats, animals, like how they behave, but then also humans that may not communicate in the same way as other humans to a same level. It doesn't mean they're any less intelligent. If anything, I think they're still very intelligent, if not more.
Yeah.
And that, for me, that is where my issue is with the mental models, traditional cognitive psychology views, is that, oh, they have a broken mental model, or their mental model isn't
Mm.
working, or they're acting out that isn't in accordance with the social rules because they don't have the priors, and their prior information doesn't match up because they've got some processing issues. No, none of that. They are functioning, they are capable, they are competent human beings, they are competent organisms that are acting through behavior. They have a problem, they try and solve the problem. If they don't have the same tools to solve the problem as other people, they will find other ways. Maybe that looks like acting out to you, but to me, they're solving a problem. Work out what the
I
problem
had
is.
I had an experience yesterday when I was running.
Sorry, I got a bit ranty there. Carry on.
Yeah, no, no, I'm joining in. It's fun. Yeah, like exactly the point. I had an experience with someone yesterday, in D&D, and with D&D, you roll a dice, you gotta count. You do numbers.
Hmm.
And the mum was there, and was, he's gonna really struggle with this because because he has dyscalculus. So you may need to do it for him. And I'm
Is it
like,
dyscalculus or dyscalculia?
I don't know.
Okay.
Numbers
The number
don't.
problem. Yeah.
The number one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Now I'm in a room with five other kids, but I was watching, and all he did, so he rolled the dice, and it was a nine and then a plus six. So he was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. He was problem solving himself.
Uh-huh.
The difference was it wasn't as fast as the other kids.
Hmm.
And so this whole thing, oh, you need to do it. No, I'm not going to do it for him. I would rather just give the session a little bit longer. We have plenty of time to let him problem solve, find a solution, and move forward, which, when allowed, he did.
And what you'll probably find is as individuals start performing skills, they become attuned to certain information and they develop their ability to do those skills, which means they can do it faster sometimes, depending on the skill in the future, because that's what development is.
Yeah, they have a
That's how.
process problem. They can't process numbers.
But that's the thing, like the number problem. We have a category. There's a word problem, but there's different word problems. It could be on paper word problems or out loud word problems or thinking word problems. Like, no, all of those things are skills. They're all skills. And they're all communication skills, most of them. Most of those ones are communication skills. So, how else can organisms communicate other behaviors? You don't have to pin down one behavior. You don't have to add up numbers in your head all the time. Because believe it or not, most people don't do it in their head. Even like when I'm doing my calculations, I'm not doing the calculations in my head. I'm doing it in my body.
Mm,
I'm doing it as an organism and I'm using everything else that's going on. Because if I'm looking at numbers, I'm using the numbers that I'm seeing. So I'm using the environment to do the math. I can't do the math without the environment because then I don't know the number.
mm,
Like, and even with the nines times table, no, I don't hold my hands up anymore, but I still use my hands. I'm still, I'm still engaged in embodied cognition when I'm doing calculations. Like 2 times 9, that's the second finger on my hand that I put down, and now it's 1 and 8. If people don't know that trick, that's how I learnt my 9 times tables. That's what I still do because it's quick. And I don't need to hold my hands up and move them down now because I can do it without moving my hands down. Does it mean that I'm not? No, I am still moving my hands down. It's just you can't see it.
yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Have a little bit of a ranty session today, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah. It's sad because the more you layer on more labels, the more complex it is to understand, the harder it is to move forward because it's unnecessary complexity.
So I had an interesting comment on YouTube yesterday. One of the videos that I have up on my Coach Danny YouTube channel is I would call it a react or a critique of a basketball coach. I think I was pretty fair in the video. I don't know whether you've seen it. And they were using some of the jargon inside of the sessions and the session design I didn't fully grasp. Partly because I don't know basketball. I'm not a basketball coach. There is professional elements of the game that I don't understand. I don't know where it's worth paying attention to. And I critique the session trying to understand what the purpose of the practice were. Because me as an individual, what I was doing is I was imagining if I was an individual, how would I behave? How would I solve those problems? And I would solve the problems drastically differently to the way the coaches in the coaching seminar would. They were imposing all these other constraints and rules themselves. They were adding in their own constraints to the practice design. And so I would be like, well, I'll bring a tangible example to this basketball example quickly. You can't shoot in the first 5 seconds, but you have to attack. What I would do is instead of trying to attack the defender that's by the hoop, is run away for 5 seconds until the 5 seconds is up, then run towards the hoop and shoot. I don't think you'd want people to do that in a match situation. I don't think that represents a match situation because why would you run away from the hoop if you're going to attack it? So the constraint, can't shoot within 5 seconds, encourages behavior you wouldn't want in a game situation. And so I think, fairly saying I don't see the point of the 5 second rule. And there were various other elements of this. And the comment was, can you do this for Greg Souders? And what I think is interesting about the comment is they've recognized, firstly, Greg Souders is ecologically driven. I think that's fairly obvious with the conversations that he has. If you're unfamiliar, he's BJJ, he's in martial arts, essentially. He's a martial artist that uses the ecological approach. I think fairly well. And I'm saying Alex Arama, the person that I did the basketball stuff on, also uses the ecological approach fairly well. But there are elements that we can all improve on. I am the same. Hence the I want to understand this. Like, why did you do this and why did you do that? Um, and you can use a highly constrained approach and it be effective. But the comment about can you do it with Greg, firstly, recognizes ecological psychology. Secondly, which I find more interesting, is I don't know BJJ. I don't know it. I don't know basketball. But they've asked someone that doesn't understand the intricacies of the sport to react, reflect, critique someone else's coaching practice. What that says to me, inside of sport anyway, is you don't have to know the sport to be able to coach the sport.
Mm.
And when you apply that to business, do you have to know the business to be able to coach the business?
Just
So
know people.
know the interactions, know the to use a word that's been heavily debated at the moment, to use invariants.
Hmm.
But yeah,
To you.
so you
'Cause
finding the high
at,
ticket business person might not be the best coach for you.
no, it's often the worst because all they want to do is sell you on their next thing.
Hmm.
That because that's their intention is not to help you move forward. Their intention is to get you to buy more because to keep up their high,
I would say there's
like,
multiple intentions to behavior.
yes, there
I
are
would say
multiple
that the
intentions,
leading intention
but
is
the
likely.
yeah, the most in the
Leading
most
intention.
yeah, the leading intention is to get you to buy more because then they can afford all of the bills that are stacking up due to reaching this scope of work.
I certainly feel there is a positive intention to most people that make courses.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. There is a positive intention, but also there is an underlying intention of like, I need to pay my bills.
Hmm.
So to pay my bills, because I am a high fluting coach now,
High
um,
ticket, yeah.
a high ticket coach, I'm high ticket because it costs a lot of money for me to run it because half the time I'm hiring other people to
Help.
do the other things to help, and that's expensive. I have been there. It is expensive. It costs money, and I was very fortunate to have people who were happy with what they were paid, which
Mm,
isn't as much as other coaches in the same in a larger field. And that's the problem.
mm.
Like you're not paying for the individual, you're paying for the business to keep it going.
But I think that I think that relates to all of society, like all of the
Yeah.
societal like business models. It is
Oh yeah.
performance first. It's money first. So
Oh yeah. I mean, when
it's
people
not
hire
going
me, they're
anywhere.
hiring like that. People are hiring me. They're hiring me so I can pay my bills. Like I am completely within that field as well.
We all have the same.
Yeah. I
Hey, we
just
all have the same problem when it comes to money. We need enough to survive. We all find different solutions to that.
yeah.
So
It
it's
was one of the big reasons why I joined and did work for another company because then my intention can be not influenced by how much money, and then it gives me that baseline, it gives me that capacity to play. For example, something that I'm doing is I'm completely and utterly blowing up my business. Not really, but I'm just bringing in all of the pieces of what I do in the world into one place because I'm a dynamic individual and because my audience primarily are individuals who can cope with a lot of stuff going on at once because that's how they exist in the world. That's how we all exist in the world, but they are have more capacity and are more attuned to that. Um,
Here's a question that's just emerged. Have you seen Philosophy Tube's recent video that came out like a day ago?
no, it's on my watch list.
Okay, so they debate.
Was this the woke Nietzsche woke?
Yeah, yeah,
I've seen some clips on TikTok because I follow her on TikTok. So yeah, I
right.
was watching that.
Yeah, I watched it yesterday, and I'm because obviously the political sphere is drastically different from the academic and psychological sphere.
Mm.
But I I'm just going to say this. I feel ecological psychology isn't woke, but it opens up to the ideologies far more than traditional cognitive psychology because it embraces all of the dynamics with very, very few labels because there's only a couple of words that are really used. Like socially, many of the words are only used by academics I buy philosophers comparing points or mathematicians trying to model. Like, you wouldn't really use attenuation or bifurcation in general conversation. I wouldn't use calibration either. Education of attention and intention, yes. Affordances and constraints, yes.
Yeah.
Much else?
Mm-mm.
Not really.
No.
Relationship, but relationship is just a word generally used. It's not a jargon-heavy term.
Yeah.
So perception, perceiving, action, behaving, but they're all words that are readily used in language. There's no addition.
The only thing I've noticed recently is I have had to clarify perception multiple times
Mhm.
because perception is assumed to be sight.
Yes, I think perception is the heaviest, metaphorically speaking,
Yeah.
word that we would use as an ecological psychologist.
Yeah.
Because perception, when described through cognitive psychology, includes memory and cognition and perception from all of the different senses.
Yeah.
So when we describe perception, it is an organism's experience,
Mm.
which, simply put, sounds easy, but when explored, is extremely deep. And that's where all those other words and jargon and assumptions get involved, like loans of intelligence. When would you ever discuss the loan of intelligence or central executive generally? You wouldn't. Repetition without repetition. Again, you wouldn't use it. You don't need to use it. It's irrelevant in the conversation. The only time
Mm.
you really need to use those terms is when exploring deeply the ideas. But by that time, most of the time, people will have other words for those things. So it's a conversation between terminology rather than an explanation of how you believe behavior is working. You don't need to use those. Like, as a coach, I don't need to use any of those words when I'm coaching. I haven't used any of them the entire time I've been coaching at Eastbourne Trampoline.
Mm.
I'm not using it in variants. I'm not using affordances or constraints. I'm just asking people things. Can you do this without doing that? Can you do this by doing this? Can you do this in there? What's faster, this or this? What's slower, this or this? If you want to slow down, how do you do that? Okay. Like, that doesn't sound like ecological psychology, but it is because the terminology, the fundamental assumptions that I'm using with the philosophy, which, going back to the original point, opens up, I feel, the woke conversation more. But, and it's a big but, the political conversations, whatever sides you're on, because I don't think there is one side, I think there's multiple sides. Again, dynamics, spectrum. Whatever sides you're on, you still add a ton of labels to stuff. And so ecological psychology tries to sweep it away, but society doesn't like you sweeping it away, which I
No.
think is why some of the more academically trained or academically experienced individuals on either side try to avoid the labels, but they need to use the labels in order for things to come across on social media, which is just a pain in the bum. Why can't we all just accept that labels are useless?
That's why
Well,
I use the label. It's
they're not
been
useless, but you know what I mean.
no, they're not. They have they yeah, they're not useless. They could be if we moved away from them, but it's not how we interact.
Labels ill-defined cause more issues,
Yeah.
I think.
Mm.
I think the meaning behind words are important to expose. And if you don't
Yeah.
expose your meaning when discussing with other people, then conflicts happen. And that is where I think labels are used to try and discuss meanings, but by adding a label, you're now adding another meaning. And meanings overlap, and then you get really complicated systems like we have, and you have hundreds of meanings of different things, and you have hundreds of words of those things, all which actually have overlapping meanings, which is why I say, oh, that sounds similar to this, and that's actually similar to that as well. Does that mean that is this? No, they're completely different, but because you've added so many labels, they sort of have crossover. Forget all the words. But obviously, I'm biased.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Bye bye labels.
Yes. I had a conversation. Well, I haven't had a conversation. I emailed my head of course, and they responded, and I haven't responded yet. I've been filling up my time with other things. Uh, that right there. Sorry. I said that to someone the other day, and they were like, "What do you mean you filled your time with other things?" It's like, well, it's not I was too busy. It's I filled my time with other things. I had other priorities, and they were like, "I like that. Yeah, yeah, that's right." I was like, "I know, because that's what I did. It's not oh, I'm too busy or I couldn't be bothered or I forgot. No, I filled my time with other things." Um, anyway, yeah. So I haven't responded to them yet, but I asked them about coach development, and I want to get your opinion on this because I feel like you're doing the same thing, just not as a coach. Well, as a coach, I'll explain. So, running Eastbourne Trampoline, it's
Yeah.
fine. It's easy-ish. But when it comes to coaching, I coach drastically differently to other traditional coaches.
Mm.
And if I want to expand Eastbourne Trampoline, ideally, I would bring in coaches with a similar philosophy, a similar coaching philosophy, that is.
Ooh.
Yes. How do I either educate those individuals, especially if they are not willing to change? How do I find those individuals? I don't think there are any in trampoline from my experience, but we will see. Or how do I create these individuals? Yes. Uh, Creating those individuals takes a lot of time.
Mm.
Educating those individuals takes a lot of time.
Mm.
Finding those individuals is effing difficult. Um, so I asked my head of course, what did he do? And he describes them as red pill thinkers because they are thinking outside of the box, outside of the traditional metaphorical box in most of sports coaching.
Yeah.
He came up with three answers. One, spend years coaching other coaches. I'm like, right, great. Two, have students and educate them before they can be narrowed in, like hammered into these planks of wood. The image I'm sure you've seen online, if you haven't,
Yeah.
those listening, wood goes into classroom, comes out planks because everyone gets hammered and sawed into the same shape, the same mold. Yeah. Try and get them before they do that. The only people I have access to that would be the participants. But it's going to take, again, a lot of time to train them. Uh, or, and this was great, get lucky. I'm like, brilliant. So what you're saying is I need to get lucky. I need to spend loads of years and loads of time educating individuals because we're not at a spot where you can just encourage coaches to be ecologically driven. I
Yeah.
imagine that's where you're at with your clients.
Yeah. I would love there to be more me's, but there aren't.
Yeah.
It would be I look forward to the day where I can coach coaches into the ecological way of working and it will transform business. It will transform. It will transform everything. I'm finally deciding to start in my little corner where I have the most um
Expertise,
yes, expertise in, which is in the neurodiverse space because experience because
community.
my lived experience I cannot gain any more. I have expertise in my own lived experience as a neurodiverse person with a lot of stuff that they've gone through. Like
Mm.
I've gone through a lot. I've done a lot. I've thingied a lot. So there we go. Right, just
I am
use that.
curious
Mm.
if I was to join any of those conversations, would I be accepted isn't the right word. It's not the accurate word here. But would I be seen as neurodiverse? Do you think I would be seen as neurodiverse? While I sit here with my fidget toy shaking my leg because I can't sit still, moving around on my fidget chair.
Well, it would depend.
On.
Your replies are I don't know. I don't know because I see you as quote unquote neurodiverse. I
You
do.
you see me as
Yeah.
neurodiverse, yeah.
Yeah, because we can have massive conversations about a small concept every single week without even trying. That's just one of the behaviors. That's the fact. Fiddling with stuff all the time,
Yeah.
plus the fact you can't keep still, plus the fact I spent 3 days with you, and goodness me. Like, yeah, I would. And I
Oh, and that the 3 days with you, I was trying to be like tapered because I recognize you're not as, or you weren't as go up and go as I was,
no,
or as I am.
tapered.
Yes, yeah,
You were less tapered the last time you were here.
yeah,
When you came here, I could tell. It's
yeah.
really
That I mean that was me ending. I say ending my day. I was ending my day, but I came in at 100 miles an hour because I'm a 100 miles an hour person.
yeah, yeah. I would. I think you would very quickly. Yeah, I don't know. Probably.
Because it's like I don't, as you know, identify as neurodiverse, but then I don't like the term at all either. So, uh, but a lot of like I am known as the Orange Man, like the Orange Trampoline Man. Like that is my name. Like most people don't know my name because you say someone's name when you first introduce, and then you rarely actually ask their name again. In UK culture anyway. I know in in America, you say someone's first name sometimes in reference. In the UK, you just don't. If you know a person, you wave, say hi, and then start the conversation, or you just start the conversation straight away, or you tap them on the shoulder and go. Uh, so the only reason I know people's names is because I'm doing all the admin. So I am known as the Orange Man or the Orange Trampoline Man because I'm always in orange, and trampoline is related to me. Other people get forgotten because there's no specific detail specifying information that they are attuning to when it apart from the face. So they recognize the face, go, oh, I know you from that thing or that time or this place. But I deliberately wear orange, so I'm remembered. There is another piece of information that people can share about me that is different from others. I mean, I told you my story about the orange, why I wear orange. Like, people stopped pointing at me because I was wearing orange, and they could say to the other person, "Oh, the person in orange is deaf." Like, it means I didn't get pointed at.
Yeah.
Like back then, I didn't know that was because it was specifying information that they could attune to that was different from other individuals. But now that's how I would explain it. Similar with trampoline. Trampoline isn't a common sport, especially for men. So, oh, the
And
trampoline guy, or the orange trampoline guy.
it's interesting how much, and you touched on something there that I want to just grab hold of and drag out. Unlike with the traditional cognitive approaches, you don't have to know anything about it
No,
to be able to use it because you're already using it because we are.
this is where I find most conversations leading because ecological psychology and traditional cognitive psychology are both attempts to explain human behavior and the organisms. They're attempts we don't know, we can't know for sure.
No.
I'm using cognitive psychology as a placeholder because I recognize there are loads of different theories in there with like a scale. Ecological psychology, there is differences, but nowhere near as many differences. Maybe because of the size of the field, but I mean the arguments are very, very, very niche and finicky. So those that are exposed to ecological psychology explanations, I find those that have the most friction are those that use cognitive psychology approaches to explanation. The less the less someone is familiar with academic explanations of cognitive psychology, the quicker they seem to grasp and recognize the applications of ecological psychology, like those two ladies in the airport in Berlin.
Yeah.
After 20, 25 minutes of a conversation, they're like, oh yeah, yeah, I can see how that works. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Well, yeah, of course it does that because that doesn't work. That doesn't make sense. Like that wouldn't work like this. I'm like, well, it could if you do these things. Well, why would you do that? Well, that's what science is. Oh, science is silly. Yeah, I'm like, yeah. So it relates to a conversation I had with Stuart Armstrong from the Talent Equation podcast. Coach education educates the traditional approaches,
Mm.
but is that actually educating people in a direction that's less effective, and then they are having to essentially re-educate themselves? If
Yes.
that is the case, yeah, I would say so. If that is the case, then we're actually educating harmful things, potentially
Yes.
harmful things in
Yes.
schools because it's
Yes.
an outdated curriculum.
Yes.
And that's what I'm campaigning for when I'm talking about ecological psychology. That's the sign for campaign, by the way. Um, yeah, that's what I'm campaigning for, to introduce ecological psychology. Not because I think it's the right answer,
No.
or that I think it is the only answer, or it's the best answer. I certainly think it's the one that suits my explanations the best. And I would certainly say that it's helped me more than the other approaches.
Mm.
And what I don't understand is why we can't have that competition. Well, actually, I do understand. What I don't understand is the reasons that people give, which is like 7 steps down in the first understand and coming back. Like, I understand all the barriers inside of the educational systems and in putting them in place and the limitations and the barriers and the problems. I recognize all of those. I understand those problems. But then coming all the way back, I don't understand why they can't put the solutions in place. Now, I do understand why they can't put those solutions in place, but I don't agree with the reasons why they can't put those solutions in place. So I don't understand their behaviors as to why you don't put those solutions in place. Hopefully that made sense.
Yes.
Uh, so hence my
Yeah.
frustration. That
Yeah.
right there could be described as a neurodiverse. Oh, I'm going way off tangent here. No, it is directly related to what it is that I'm talking about, but I need to go sideways to come back to have the conversation because I needed to explain the meaning behind the words.
And the context.
Precisely.
I love my conversations with my clients because they're like,
I thought
oh,
you were going to
sorry,
say
I've
me
gone off
then.
topic.
Oh.
Oh, I had a conversation with you. Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Like,
Yeah, you're okay. You do.
you're all right. I tolerate you. It's fine. I like conversations with people because they go off on tangents, and I'm just like, let's follow the tangent. Let's go. Let's like go. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going off topic. I'm like, no,
Keep going.
there is no on or off topic. There is just where you are at. Let's look at where you're at.
Have you
Because,
used current future yet?
ooh, no, that's fun. Current future. Yes.
I brought it up a couple of times, and I don't think I haven't experienced you use it, but
No.
it's the term that I like to use because one, the looks, you're like, what? Current future? What? That makes no sense.
Mm.
But I think it
But the
explains.
opportunities for that, like if you just saying current future, and oh, 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 what does that mean? Like just the curiosity of that. What does it mean to be in a current future? Like what does that mean? Well,
I mean,
we're
I know how I would explain it.
we're here. We're in. It's just exciting. I can't even put into words how exciting that is. When you start thinking about how we're in a current future. Oh, well, what about now? Oh, it's just changed. Yeah, it has changed. And now, and now, and now, and now.
Now, I remember being a child and doing that all the time. I used to say
Same.
all the time, oh yeah, but it's 1 o'clock. Well, no, it's not. It's one past. No, it's two past. No, it's three past. No, it's four past. And there's one of the boys at Eastbourne Trampoline that does the same thing. Like if you say, oh, you're standing on the mat. No, I'm not, because you'll get off the mat. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no, you're not anymore. Like that annoys a lot of people, annoys teachers because he's always moving around. He's ADHD. He's always moving around, got tons of energy. He's got skipping rope. Oh, he's not thinking about other people around him. Yes, he is. He's gone to a space where there isn't anyone. Then someone walks into his space and he doesn't know that they're there. He knows that they're there. Well, he doesn't know they're there. And then when they move, then he'll stop. Uh, but it's pointing out that well, it's different now, and now it's different now, and it's oh, but that was back then, and this is now. Yeah, but it's roughly the same. Yeah, but it's not the same. And
Mhm.
pointing out those current futures, it's similar to asking the why, like when you're a child, like, but why? But why? But why? But why? Like, it's different now, and it's different now. That was different then, and now it's different because we live in a current future. It's annoying to people that want to put labels on things and categorize things and have a start and stop measure, but it's the way the world works. So yeah,
Yes.
current future is something that I like to use, and I figured I'd bring your attention to it.
I'm going to use it everywhere now.
Where appropriate, of course.
No, everywhere.
Just current future, and then we're going to go down to current future.
Ah, I need to make a tea in the current future.
Yes, you can say I am making a tea in the current future. I am drinking my water in the current future because I'm not currently drinking it right now, but I know I will do because I want to have a sip. Just like that. Which is the current future. And when people say, "Oh, when does it start?" You're like, "Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It did." When do you define start? Because ecological psychology defines starting before birth.
So cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
That entire idea is so cool.
Well, when you think about the political discussions about abortion and all of the rest of it, I recognize there's a lot of complexity and sensitivity around the topic. But ecological psychology argue you experience before birth. Like that mutes a lot of people's arguments right there. And how far you take that, obviously, we won't get into it, but that is part of the conversation that ecological psychology encourages. So going all the way back to the original point, oh, ecological psychology is limited. Limited to what?
That's your the limitation is the current understanding.
Yeah.
That's the limitation. It's not ecological psychology. It's you.
Hmm.
Sorry.
Yeah. What I mean, this is one of the reasons that I'm going to be doing these videos on ecological psychology stuff, and I think I'm gonna like I've been doubling down on the sports coaching stuff recently because I
Mhm.
wanted to get some practical application or practical examples or practical discussions of topics.
Mhm.
Uh, but I feel like I need to not necessarily put that on pause, but I need to bring more attention to ecological psychology and the ideas.
This is something I'm doing a similar thing for on the Substack is talking about the concepts because I wanted to go one direction and I was like, yeah, but there are so many assumptions that we need to look at first. And it was really cool because that post that I replied to, which is why I was late for our session last week,
Hmm.
turned into its own post because I was like, yeah, this is actually quite good. This is a good like starting place to begin with. So
Mm.
let's turn that in a post and then put a nice title that make people want to look at it.
Yeah, yeah,
And it made people want to look at it. So
yep. So, I think we could probably. Is that what I? Oh no, I was going to say. I was just looking at the authors of the book. I was like, it's the wrong book. It's because there's a book underneath it. I was looking at the title of the book underneath the book that I was reading the authors of. So that's why.
good.
Yeah. I have a stack of 9 books.
Current future.
Well, I have a stack of seven, nine, four, three, 6, and 2, and then another one on the other side.
Nice.
So yes, that is my desk, everyone.
I
I
have just
think.
emptied my desk.
Sorry, what was that?
I have just emptied my desk.
I know. No, I mean they're just the books on my desk. I then have other things, obviously fidget toys. Well, I say fidget toys. I have a letter opener. I have a USB stick that I fiddle with. I have three camera batteries. I have two different microphones. I then have a paper bookmark. I then got my meds. I've got nail clippers. Well, I've got nail clips up here. I have no idea. Uh, Scissors. Like,
No, I was purely clearing my desk with the intention of putting my keyboard back because I'm going to be doing some music again because I haven't done that for a long time. So
oh, nice, nice. So yeah. Oh, I did have toilet roll, but it's now down there. That's my eye.
yeah.
Sometimes I with my meds, and I'm like, ah. So, but yeah, I think we've ranted and raved enough about ecological psychology for 1 hour. I was gonna say one day because I'm sure it will continue.
Oh yeah, probably.
So, right, thanks everyone. See you all
Bye.
next week.